Audio Jungle.
Welcome to the HuskGuys podcast. Oh yeah!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the HuskGuys podcast. Episode number three. This is our first time recording after a game, which is one of the things that we'll get into. But as my guest, who I'll announce in just a second, was one of my hesitancies of getting into podcasting in general, was podcasting after a loss. How do you handle that? But we're going to handle it well. We're excited for it. We're going to kick things off well because it's our job. It is our duty as the HuskGuys to maintain positive energy throughout this entire thing, bring the Koolaid, bring the flow the whole time. So we are pumped to get this things going. We got to get the vibes back up because the vibes are low, folks. So before we kick things off, and before I introduce our very special guest, we've got three presenting sponsors. We've got Pipeline Jerky, as always. So the line played pretty well. We'll get into that with our special guest. Line played pretty well. The boys are playing well. We need you guys to continue to support Pipeline Jerky. Those who are on the YouTube stream can see we're eating Pipeline Jerky tonight. Every bag purchased supports the offensive line directly. It's an NIL opportunity for the Huskers offensive line. Also, check out some of our gear at HuskGuysStore.com. We have shifted from this is the year gear to run the ball. Everything is going to be run the ball themed because that is what we should be doing, even though we continually pass Satterfield. You're in my crosshairs. And finally, Land Lore. Look, the last decade, 2 decades, they've given us a little bit of wrinkles. Some of us, we got some wrinkles. We may not want to admit it, but they're there. So how about this? Why not try and at least fight back a little bit? Just like the black shirts, fight back, defend against getting old and haggard and run down looking. Land and Lore has all sorts of products that help you with this, and everything is from the land. It's natural, good stuff, made in Nebraska. When you try it, you get 10% off by using HuskGuys10 at checkout. So Land and Lore at land-lore.com, proud sponsor and wrinkle killer of the HuskGuys podcast. So without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce you guys to somebody who doesn't need an introduction, one of the godfathers of Huskers podcasting. He goes back 8 years. We've been friends for a long time, purely internet friends that have turned into real life friends. Very excited to have on Mr. Honke from the Go Big Red cast. Honke, say what's up.
What's up, Dave? How you doing?
Oh, man, we are good. Well, I'm mostly good. I'm actually not great, but I'm turning into better. So we'll kick it off that way.
I loved your tweet today that the evolution of Husker fans on Friday it's over. Saturday, oh my gosh, Colorado's going to win the national championship, and by Sunday, okay, well we kind of played okay, and Monday it's better, and then by today we're going to win it. So
yeah, dude, we're back.
Yeah, we're right on path.
So we've been So before we go through the Dave spiral that I've experienced over the last 5 days, so yeah, definitely. You go into a deep, dark spot. I think like jumping right into it, right? So you were at the game.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start with a little bit of positivity first. We'll jump into some other stuff as we dive through it. But you went out there, the best part of the season is usually like the preseason and the off season followed by pre-games, right? And then the game itself like punches you in the gut and makes you want to die. But tell us about the atmosphere. What was it like up there? And you're also going to Colorado, so you're full of all of it. But what was the atmosphere like in Minnesota? What were the Husker fans like? Tell us a little bit about the experience of popping up there.
It was a great experience. There's a lot of people that we met that we've known, kind of like how you and I got started, all through Twitter and social media. A lot of people that I've met through social media that we actually had the chance to meet in person up there. Lions Pub, we were there on Wednesday night when the volleyball team had 92,000 people showing up at Memorial Stadium. So that was great to see that in Lions Pub, which was packed full of Husker fans there. And then the next day we went back and did the pregame show. And yeah, we had everything from Sean Callahan was on it. We had John from Corn Nation. We had Malachi's parents. We had the Dean of the College of Business on it. I mean, it was a fun-filled, packed pregame. And Jeffrey the Greek from Eyes on Big. So just some people, even Big Game Boomer, met people that I've only interacted with on social media, got to actually meet them in person. And it's kind of interesting when you do get to meet people in person that sometimes you walk away with different perspectives that maybe you didn't have beforehand. But it was a great environment. The Minnesota people, none of the fearful pregame, don't come here, you're going to get robbed and all that stuff. Minnesota was great. They're awesome.
Colorado fans are like that.
Yeah, no, Colorado fans, yeah, no. And I should mention too, Vegas Jerry, my goodness, he put us up for him and his wife Steph put us up for 3 days and was just an amazing host. So Vegas Jerry's outstanding. And it was a really fun weekend. It was a fun game to be at too. The last 5 minutes, I wish would have finished different for us, but there's a lot of good that you can take away from that game if we didn't have 6 years of battered fan syndrome built up in our heads going into the game.
So let me ask you this. Did you think we were going into the game? What was your level of confidence that we were going to win?
I just thought it was going to come down to the end. I figured that we'd be neck and neck with them. And, I don't bet on games. I don't do pregame predictions with the other guys were all, we'll win by 7 or we'll lose by 7 and somewhere in between. And I was like, well, that probably sounds about right. Everyone thought it would be 24-21. So I assumed it would be something completely different, 13-10 or 38-35. It can't just be exactly how people think coming into it. But it was very apparent, 1 quarter into the game that, oh my goodness, this is not only is this going to be a low scoring game, but I think with the new clock rules and everything, this is going to move by. And before you knew it, you're in the second quarter already. And I think, each team had only had about 1.5 possessions each, on average. So, I mean, it was like, my goodness, this is going to be a little different than previous years.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So I've had some time to reflect, and so I went into it, and on the first podcast, I even mentioned this, because I did the season preview. I thought we'd lose, only because I just thought coming into a new season with a new coach and a new staff, and all of the new players and all the new transfers that we had, I didn't love the matchup of going on the road on a Thursday night and playing against a 7th-year PJ Fleck. I just didn't really love the matchup. And I had in it, deep down for me, I had a concern that we'd get blown out, to be perfectly honest. I just was like this. I just don't love this matchup. I'd much prefer to start with Northern Illinois. So, I sort of predicted the loss from the beginning, not to say like I wanted it, and then for the record, I then said we're going to go 10-2. So that is still on the table after this. I think what happened, and why we're seeing everything react the way that it was, like you said, there's this battered fan syndrome of it's probably the worst possible way that Rule could have lost, in the sense of for the battered fan syndrome that is going on within Husker Nation, right? Because I think if we it's hard to say if we had lost 35-0, if people would have been like, oh, that was fine. I don't think they would have been. But I think losing in a fourth quarter meltdown again for the 20th straight time or whatever it is, I think that's what caused a lot. It's what's causing the full blown meltdown, and in combination with the fact that Colorado played out of their minds with the first year head coach, which we'll get into later. But I think both of those things are definitely what's causing the swirl and the spiral that we're seeing across the way. So yeah, it's definitely that. I don't know. It's Rule of all the ways to lose, controlling and dominating a game, which I guess let's start there, right? So we're in the game, you're in the stadium, and the first quarter goes by, the first half. I actually think we played really well the entire first half. I think, and I think the biggest bright spots we have are on the defensive side. I mean, defensively, I felt great. Even towards the end of the game, I had no issues with us, kind of turning the ball over. It was like, oh, the defense will stop them, which I haven't had that feeling in a long time. But I guess tell me about the vibes in the stadium, or what you felt about the first half, right? It flew by. They were controlling the clock like crazy. They were converting seemingly every third down conversion, but they weren't scoring, right? So they weren't scoring. And so it was still close. Give me your kind of first half assessment. What was it like in the stadium? How are you guys feeling coming out of the gates? All right, does Rule have this thing going on?
I think across the board, when Mac and I drove out there, we did, our 5 expectations or things that we think will happen during the season. And the first one was physicality. We just thought we were going to be a more physical team than we've seen in previous years based off of everything they've done from the offseason, practice, camp, you name it. And what we saw on all 3 phases of the game showed up right away. The kickoff return team, our kickoff team, I mean, man, they couldn't get past our 20. Our guys are flying down the field, making good tackles. Defensively, a lot of open field one-on-one tackles being made, but even when we would get somebody kind of corralled, all of a sudden there'd be 2 or 3 more guys joining there. So it was kind of, there's a lot of gang tackling going on there. Offensively, I think of the first play that we had the ball, they punted us down to our 1-yard line on a very good punt, it would have been virtually impossible for Kemp to try to go up and try to catch that one. And it bounces down to the 1-yard line, and we get under center and push them to the 5-yard line on the first play, 4 yards right up the gut. And so there was a lot of things from a physicality standpoint that I thought we were doing well right off the bat. That 4-yard quarterback sneak on the first play is interesting because Mac and I talked a lot about it on the way back, on the drive back, is that when we get to running the football, we really have to appreciate a 3 to 4 yard carry right now and not try to move away from that. 3.5 yards a carry gets you a first down if you do that 3 straight times. And right now, with the way the clock rules are and everything, and the way that we're built as a team, we've got to appreciate 3.5 yards. We've got to get first downs. We've got to keep clocks moving. And there were some things we did offensively in the first half I liked. I liked some of the stuff with Jeff Sims in the zone read. I liked the under center I formation option that he did. There's areas where I don't think we're as good at. And I think that's something that, Rule mentioned. I think it was on the Big Red wrap up. He said it to Michael Severe before the season, that as the year goes on offense, he was saying specifically to offense, we're going to cater this offense around our strengths. We're going to build up things we do well, and we're going to take some of the things we don't do so well and probably not do them. And I think we learned some things in this first game, some things that I think we do well, and definitely some things I would try to stay away from.
Yeah, I think so. Let's get into that. So the offense was interesting, and we're focusing on the first half. Sims ran the ball a lot, and I think he finished with 19 carries. So the concern off the bat with that is I think he's a great athlete. I think he can run. I agree. He was running the option well. He's pulling the ball well. His fakes were strong. But can you run your quarterback 19 times per game? I mean, you could when it was Eric Crouch and Frost back in those days, but I think it's kind of a different age. And I think that was right off the bat. I was like, oh my God, this guy's running a ton. So the durability became a concern, but we put together some good drives. So, that first drive was okay, but the second and third drive were strong drives. I think even the interception drive all the way down at the end is like we drove the entire length of the field, scored a touchdown. Which, by the way, did you guys know that we scored a touchdown? Did you know in the stadium that like
they weren't showing that play? That it was really kind of suspect how they were doing. I think some of the replay, so we couldn't exactly tell what they were referencing on the replay. But regardless. Everything we were getting text messages that, we were across the goal line. That should be a touchdown, that we got hosed and everything. So
it was a while. Yeah, it was a while. So that drive was great, right? That's an 11 play. I'm looking at now, 11 play, 58-yard drive. Strong. We're driving the ball, running the ball, like seemingly a pretty good in control offense. And I think that's everything that Rule was promising. Like this is going to be a team that's in control. We're going to run the ball. We're going to, have a little bit of dump out passes. Sims is going to run the ball. I was like, this seems fine. And if it doesn't end in catastrophe, with that interception, I think you're probably looking at that first half 7-3, 7-3 or 3-3, and you're like feeling pretty good, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, that's what it felt like there. You were talking about Sims and the amount of rushes that he had. He had 19 carries, 3 of them being sacks. So when you sack adjust that, there's about 16 carries, and I think that you could probably cut that in about half and go. Half of those could be option-based zone read. You're reading it, making those decisions that way. And the other half, there were a number of them that were QB leads where he's following a running back up the gut. And those are the ones where that's just got to go. Eventually, that's got to go to Irvin. And he's your starting running back. You have 7 carries with him for 55 yards, 7.9 yards a carry.
Yeah.
I mean, when you do the sack adjustment on how many yards we had, it was like 34. I had the number somewhere. It was like 34 carries for like 200 and some yards. It was 6.0 something yards a carry when you remove the sacks from it. If you're running that's a positive that comes out of this. We ran the ball.
It's the first down every other play.
Yeah, we're running the ball really well against Minnesota, and Minnesota's defense is going to be better than Colorado's.
Yeah, significantly better.
That has to be a takeaway from this, where you can't walk away from that game if you're the coaches and look at that and go, we need to go in some different direction. We need to throw the ball more or whatever. No, we need absolutely to get in some big sets, and Irvin's got to get the ball more there. Fullbacks, tight ends, all 3 of those running backs can run it too, but we've got to get Irvin the ball.
Yeah, I think that's the run the damn ball. It's like you got to figure out how to get him the ball. You got to figure out how to pound the rock, and like we just weren't doing that. And I think that's again. So it's like I think if you look at the first half, You're like, okay, we're playing a Minnesota team tight. Like I would have signed up for that all day. 3-3, 3-7, 3-0. Like that's a great half. We're not getting blown out. We're right in this game, And I think everybody went in half thinking that. But I will say so that the interception was bad. And I think that all three of the interceptions really, I think, is what's causing a lot of angst amongst Husker Nation, including myself. They were bad interceptions. There's no other way around it, right? I mean, the interception at the end of the half in the end zone. He's staring right at the guy, just looking him down, and I don't know if you caught that while live in the stadium or you caught any of the replays, but it was like, I think he had Borkature right in front of him, wide open. And if he had thrown it a little bit, a better touch pass toward the back of the end zone, he also completes it. So it was almost like there was like 10 different ways that play could have not ended in disaster, including throwing it out of the back of the end zone. That would have resulted in points. So I don't know. Do you have concerns about? It's probably too early to tell, but Sims had a ton of interceptions at Georgia Tech, big time turnover, low completion percentage, and he showed that a little bit, on Thursday. Do you have any concerns around that, or is it more just like let's refocus the offense around what he's done really well, which he ran the ball extremely well?
Yeah, if I'm the defense, I want to see him standing in a pocket every play. Whether he completes 50 straight passes on us, I don't care. If I'm the defense, I still want him in the pocket every single play. It's a vision thing. It's a decision thing. It's a poise thing. Shedeur Sanders had great poise in the pocket against TCU.
Yep.
I know he can run the football, and yet he didn't really go off and take off a lot of times. He felt the rush coming, and he knew when to get rid of the ball. I never saw that from Sims pretty much from the start. I never felt comfortable with him in the pocket. And it wasn't just throwing interceptions. It's missing wide open guys. It's taking some sacks that didn't need to be taken. I don't know that he had. And then, by the way, then our offensive line sucks, of course, when we get a sack. I mean, that's just the way it happens, right? And so what happens is he gets the same amount of pressure on him that we were getting on Minnesota's quarterback. The Minnesota's quarterback would feel that pressure, and he would roll out, get away from it, and sometimes make a pretty simple pass out of the pocket.
Or he got rid of it.
Or just got rid of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing with Sims is that he is so dangerous outside the pocket. We see that when he's running the football, but on the throw too. And when you roll somebody out of the pocket, you can start to, from a decision-making standpoint, you can cut the field into half. You can make it to where, hey, there's two receiving options over here, or run. Everything's fast. I mean, there were just times that things felt slow. The decision-making felt slow when he's standing there in the pocket and he's just trying to read too many things there. And so I think as we talk about what does each player do well, or what is this offense going to do, even the Anthony Grant fumble, why was he on the field that play? Because that play, they said Anthony Grant runs that well. So they identify plays that players run well versus not. I think with Sims, there's got to be some things. I'm not saying completely tear the whole playbook out, that part of it. We're going to still throw out of the pocket some. Don't get me wrong. But there are some things, especially early in the season right now, that I think we can tear away right now and not focus as much on. If I think we can beat Colorado offensively, I think we can move the ball and score touchdowns on them just by doing zone reads, options, power football, play action rolls, get the quarterback outside the pocket, and seeing a run pass ratio that's going to look a lot more like a 66 to 33%, maybe 70-30 kind of thing.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I guess so. Here's as we transition into the second half. Really, this is where it got weird for me. Is I think the first half, you look at it, you're like, okay, we're playing well, and even really the start, right? So the start of the first half, you've got the Ramir Johnson kick return followed by the Alex Bullock touchdown, which was the most bizarre touchdown of all time. I mean, did you guys know what was happening in the stadium?
It was right in front of us, and so the angle that we got to see. I guess it was Grant turn back around and then throw it backwards and have it not be caught. And the pass that he threw looked really bad from our angle. It looked a little better on TV. It looked like, Sims just dropped it. From our angle, it looked like, what a terrible throw. But Sims just had all the time in the world. And by the way, outside the pocket for what it's worth too, to pick it up and, just sling it. And then, we're looking at, before he even threw it, I look in the end zone. I'm like, oh, that dude's wide open. We just get it to him. This is a touchdown. And so it was a pretty amazing play.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny you say that because that was the most relaxed throw he threw all day, and it was on a ball that he was bouncing like a basketball, and picks it up and sidearms and just like effortlessly throws a touchdown. You're like, okay, he's got it. Like he can do it. He's got it in there. It's like, I just think, to your point, he's not a drop back passer. So like that's where it was. That showed me a lot about him. He's got poise. He's an athlete. Bullet can catch. Good. I'm like good across the board. So now you're starting. It's 7-3. Defense is playing well. They followed up with 3 and out. But then we back it up with a punt. But going into Omar Brown interception. I guess where it got weird for me again. So this is even like all the way up through. Then we had a 13-play, 80-yard drive, fantastic drive, all the way up to a field goal. Would have liked to punch it in, finish with a field goal. We're up 10-3, and we're playing extremely well. So this is 13-play, 80-yard drive, 7 minutes left in the quarter. Feeling great. I mean, did you feel great at this point in the game? 10-3, we're controlling the ball. The defense is playing well. Like, were you feeling extremely strong like I was at this point in the game?
Yeah, I mean, the way our defense was playing, it felt like it was going to take a lot from Minnesota, that we were going to have to make mistakes to give Minnesota a real short field because our special teams was playing well, our defense was playing well, that it was going to take special plays by Minnesota and it was going to take some bad mistakes by us to finish up that game to where, at the very least, that we would lose it in regulation. When we were up 7, I was like, man, this should be overtime at worst, the way that we're playing.
Yep, exactly right. And I think that, so with all the momentum on our side, 10-3, we force another 3 and out, 3 straight incompletions, rushes through everywhere. You've got, I forget if Ty Robinson was in the game at this point or he'd already been kicked out. We're getting pressure. I'm like loving this.
Yeah, he was gone already by that point.
He was gone already, but even, Polar Bear's getting sacked. The guys are going, so we could do another 3 and out. And following this 3 and out, this is where you get into the 3 passes, which Satterfield's getting pummeled for. And I've softened my stance a little bit on this, but at the time in watching the game, you're dominating the ball. We just finished a 13-play, 80-yard drive, running the ball like crazy. Gabe Irvin was running really well. Jeff Simmons was running really well. And we dial up 3 straight passes that take 55 seconds. And those 55 seconds give them right back to Minnesota. So I've softened my stance on this a little bit, only because the first pass, and I don't know if you guys saw it in the stadium, Tommy Hill was so open.
Sure. For all the talk coming into the season about our wide receiving core, and I was having discussions pregame with some people about, we don't have receivers that can, take the top off. We need receivers that can take the top off. I've always thought that's one of the biggest BS statements I've ever heard. We've got fast guys. I mean, if it's just about speed, we have guys that can beat somebody, running down the field. That's not, but taking the top off, so much of that is built upon what your offense does, that with play action and everything. Tommy Hill took the top off, so to speak. He was 5 yards, 6, 7 yards behind the guy. So it had nothing to do with not being able to have a receiver to take the top off. We couldn't complete the pass to the guy who we took the top off to. So we couldn't complete the pass. It's no different to me than having Borkature standing there wide open but not seeing him. It's one of those plays that, in that sense, is it one that we can, on a routine enough basis, complete and be successful doing? If it is, keep it in there. Yeah. And if not, if it's, I don't want what it coulda, shoulda. I don't mind the call in the sense that we thought that we had a chance to get him open. We got him open. We whiffed on it. Once you whiff on it, man, when you get to 2nd down and 3rd down, we need to move some clock and we need to run the football, and we're getting 6 point, something yards per carry. And that's the frustrating part I think that I would have. Not the first play. It's the 2nd and the 3rd one that we needed to be able to get the ball to our running backs and try to run the ball there at the end. But the taking the first shot was worth a shot, I guess. It's bad. It's too bad because he was there.
Yeah, and again, I've softened my stance. At the moment, I lost sleep over this, and the night of it, I just was like, I cannot believe this. 3 straight passes, and as I was replaying the game Thursday night, it's like, I can't believe we just that drive was where everything, because it's really where everything stopped. It was following a 13-play, 80-yard drive where we dominated and we chewed up 8 minutes of clock was how long that drive took. Followed it up with 55-second drive that gives the momentum right back to him. But I guess because that some of it's hard because we were spoiled with Casey Thompson and Trey Palmer. They complete that pass 10 out of 10 times last year. Sure. It's a game changer and, wins you the ball game. And without, then you're like, to your point, can Sims complete that pass? And if not, then we're done with it. And then the next pass, also Kemp was open on the next pass too. So again, I've softened my stance because I'm like, all right, Satterfield, who, I think it's easy to always hate the offensive coordinator. He called 2 plays. They're open both times. Just didn't complete the passes, and you're like, all right, is Sims not seeing the field? Is it just like weird luck? Is it the windy? I heard it was windy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So that
Yeah.
drive was like definitely a point. That was a turning point in the game.
That first down pass is probably my most disappointing throw the whole game from Sims, because that's the kind of play I expect him to make. That's an easy enough throw. You just have to have the arm to get it there. That's an easy enough throw because it's a one-on-one quick decision, play action, set the guy up. Tommy Hill got deep. That's a pass that I'm not sitting there say take that out of the playbook. That one needs to be there, and he needs to be able to hit that. That also, in my opinion, the way that the game was flowing at that point should have been the last throw of the game for us, at least of the fourth quarter. I didn't see another reason after that we needed to pass again. When the Sims and Thompson comparisons kind of come in, and it's easy to make that. Yeah, I think Thompson makes some of those throws that Sims doesn't. Thompson can't come close to running some of the plays that Sims ran early in the game too. So They're different styles, and we need to think of that. I honestly think that we simplified some things on defense. I know Tony White wanted to blitz more often than he did. He did a couple blitzes, and Minnesota beat it a couple of times. And I think he kind of took a little more vanilla approach after that and just tackle well, stay in your lanes. And we did that on defense. On offense, I wish we would have done less and done less better. Yeah. I mean, that's where my frustration coming out of that one game was. But overall, I mean, we moved the ball well enough against that defense. We needed to punch in some more points. You can't leave that many red zone points on the, off the scoreboard and expect to win on the road like that.
Yeah. So all good points. Actually, I don't even want to. I'm looking at these last 4 drives on screen. I'm not even talking about them because it's the positive vibes only. They're getting rightfully, I think, hammered for having Anthony Grant in there when he's been a fumble machine. Why do you have your third string running back in there when you should just give the ball to Gabe Ervin to end the game? Which it's tough to look at that because it is you're 2 first downs away from ending the game, and we're on their 40-yard line, But I think those aside, and here's kind of a question. I thought it was interesting. I was listening to Nick Baugh and Rude this morning. I think they do a great podcast, and they're kind of asking this just overall philosophy on why, kind of the why behind why this keeps happening. I think Damon Benning talked about, everybody's sort of like trying to figure out, you've played a really great 55 minutes. Really great. Like that's what's like giving me hope and promise for the rest of the season. I got a couple of things that are giving me hope and promise for the rest of the season. One, defense is much improved. You can win a ton with a strong defense. 2 is 55 minutes of strong football. Like those things will improve over time. And thirdly, which we'll get to later on, is the Big Ten is a terrible conference. And so we don't have to be that good to beat other teams in the Big Ten. If you watch the rest of it, Purdue lost to Fresno State, and Wisconsin's not that good, and Iowa still can't score, and Illinois needed a miracle to beat Toledo. So you don't need to be that good. You can be, this is good enough to beat them. But if we can't finish the last 5 minutes, none of it matters, right? So they were talking like, do we not have the elite player that can finish a game? Is it just mental block that exists at the end of the game? Like, how can we continually dominate 55 minutes of every game and seemingly have these like mind-blowing mistakes at the end? What do you think that is?
Well, I wish I knew. It felt different. This game did, because this felt like a 60-minute game that we played. There's so many other times, I'll just say over the last 6 years, where we've been a very Jekyll and Hyde team, where you're really good for one quarter and you're really bad for the next, or you're really bad for one half and you come back out the next. And this was, for the most part, it was sloppy like a first game of the season would be for a lot of teams, but at least it felt like it was 60 minutes of fairly consistent football being played. Boomer took care of our social media while I was at the game, and it was the next day I saw him respond to somebody that said, how can a coach that's this experienced, have such a inconsistent team, or it's such a mistake-prone team in game one? And Boomer's response was, well, both coaches are experienced, and both teams would have had that same question afterwards, because, both of them did that. Watch Clemson last night. Dabo's been around for a little while, right? And that was a pretty mistake-prone team, and it hurt him at times that killed him. So from that perspective, once I could walk away from the game a little bit, watch some other teams go through some of the same things, it felt like a kind of a first game first game kind of, we always say that teams more often lose their first game than go out and win it in terms of like making a mistake. They find a way to lose it. And my concern or my frustration is always going to be on the offensive side with running the football. If you're running the ball well, I think coordinators sometimes outsmart themselves. They think too hard. TCU got the ball last week at the 1 yard line against Colorado, ran it the length of the field, got down to the 3 yard line, threw an interception at the goal line, and threw it to Hunter, their best cornerback. Yep. And you just sit there and you hit your head and go, why? You work that hard to get 90 some yards. What is the hesitancy to just get under center and have a fullback out there and get double tights and just run with your 230-pound back? And that's what I want to see us do. We've got to convert when we get into the red zone like that. We've got to convert touchdowns and not have field goals. And if we do that, then that game isn't coming down to the last 5 minutes. And that's the problem. We come down to the game in the last 5 minutes and it's still 7 points, but we probably were 14 points better or 17 points better the way we had played the entire rest of the game.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that is what's killing Husker Nation really is, gosh, when you look at these games, and again, I'm coming into this game thinking like, okay, Minnesota, they're big offensive line, big defensive line. They're well coached. As much as I hate to say that because I can't stand PJ Fleck, they're well coached, and they're just going to run the ball and they're going to bleed us out the way that they always do. And then you're midway through this game and you're like, God, this Minnesota team's not that good. And we are kind of good. And then you're in the third quarter and you're like, this Minnesota team's really not that good and we should beat them. And then you're late in the fourth quarter and you're like, here it is again. And this has happened over and over and over again where we've made Michigan look not that good. We've made Michigan State look not that good. We've made all these teams like look worse than they are. And then if you could just finish and have, it's just one play. I think that's what's killing me is, Gifford drops a third down interception in the end zone.
There you go.
The game's over. Anthony Grant doesn't fumble. The game runs out. The clock just runs out entirely. Jeff Sims doesn't throw that interception. You go to overtime. Maybe you win the game. That you don't have the face mask penalty. I mean, there's almost, it's never like one play. It's usually like 10, right? And you're like, we just need one player to make one play and you're 1-0.
And Minnesota had that one player make that one play on a fourth down and just made a ridiculous catch, right? It comes down to players making plays at the end of the day. I was so impressed with certain players, like some of the progress I've seen. Matt Nash doesn't make it 5 plays in a row last year with strength and conditioning, everything. He looks like a different player now. He was out there, and then he really took on a big role once Ty was off the field too. And then a lot of times he was flanked by really young guys. Cameron Leonard played a lot in that game. Great. And even Gunnarsson, that's really his first extensive, outing too. I think Minnesota's a good team, and this is something that gets lost in this is right away. Well, if we played them that closely or whatever, somehow the mentality comes out that, well, that wasn't a very good team that we just played. I think Minnesota could be a really good team. And what if, I'm just throwing this out there, what if TCU is really crappy? Yeah. Now we don't know that because they were ranked. And I gave the example of Maryland 2019. Maryland came out, beat Howard. I think it was 73-0. In their second game, they came out and they beat a ranked Syracuse and blew them out. And all of a sudden, everyone was like, Maryland's the greatest team. Oh my gosh, nobody wants to play Maryland. Maryland ended up 3-9, and that Syracuse team that they beat early in the season ended up 5-7. And both of them weren't very good. I don't know how good Colorado is right now. Maybe they're as good as everyone on ESPN says they are. Or they may have just beaten a really bad TCU team that played really bad and is a fraction of the team that was playing in the playoffs last year. We'll find out more. We'll learn more about them this weekend, and we'll learn more about Nebraska this weekend. But I do know if this is a baseline for Nebraska, if the baseline is that we're going to play special teams and defense like that, and that we have a quarterback that can run the football like he did, but we need to really hone in on the strengths of what these guys do. If this is our baseline, I think we're going to win some games this year.
Yeah, great point. So as we transition, this is now we're transitioning from Minnesota to Colorado. This is a great segue. First, check back in with our presenting sponsors. Everyone check out pipeline-jerky.com as well as land-lore.com for all of your skincare needs. Check out both Pipeline Jerky and landandlore.com. Presenting sponsors, as well as the HuskGuysStore.com to get your run the damn ball hat because we need to be running the ball more. Perfect segue, Honke, into our friends at Colorado. So this is So I will admittedly, so this now I've gone through a wild range of emotions on the Nebraska game, but also the Colorado game. So hand up, I thought Colorado was going to stink. I really did. I didn't see it. I was like, this is a clown show. And I think there were a lot of people like me that felt like that, right? You can't just get 80 new players and bring them in and, do all the social media, how about you, and all these players, they look so small on social media and they're tiny and they're talking all this big game. And you're like, this is a 111 team and they're getting wildly overhyped. So I watched that whole game start to finish with my jaw on the floor. I could not believe any of it. I think purely from the place I was coming from, I legitimately thought they would lose 49-0. I just thought he was going to put a bunch of Jackson State players out there that just didn't have any business being on a field with the reigning playoff team like TCU. I didn't think they had any business being out there. I thought they were overhyped. I thought they were going to get completely blown out. So from that standpoint to where they were, for me at least, instantly being like, I can't believe this. This is everything I had hoped Frost would do for us, right? It was just, it was like speed all over the field and an electric quarterback that can find the speed and 4 different wide receivers at over 100 yards. And just, they were fast and they had kick returns and punt returns and they were running out of the backfield that I was like, just in awe that this team that I legitimately didn't think would get a first down was keeping up with TCU and then beating TCU and then handily beating TCU. So I think there was that anchoring point that I think everybody felt as they were watching it. If not only you're coming off the hangover of losing to Minnesota, but then you're also watching this Colorado team who's under a first-year head coach, who has all brand new players and is making no excuses and is beating the heck out of a TCU team. I think there was like that shockwave that went through Husker Nation, including myself, just being like, what is going on? I will pivot and say then that, again, having reflected on that game, I do think TCU is bad. I just think that there's like, what happened there? That there was like, I think their defense is atrocious. You watch a lot of the replays and the highlights. Players are quitting on balls. Like they weren't hustling. Like their linebackers are missing tackles like crazy. And then you even look at what happened in the game itself, that they gave up. So I've got it pulled up here. I mean, they gave up 500 yards. They were giving up 260 rushing yards. They're giving up just like obscene levels of yardage, 150 kick return yards. And so you come at it from that standpoint where you're like, I was shocked, completely shocked that they were doing this. But then you're also like, God, this Colorado defense stinks. What is TCU doing? So I don't know. What did you watch it live? Or were you watching the whole thing unfold? Did you have the same kind of reactions that I did?
I watched the whole thing there. And number one, I said the same thing on Sunday, and I'll say it again. I want to give credit to Colorado before I critique them or anything. Yeah, I think that the fact that they came out and looked like they, had some concept of what they were doing. I thought Shedeur Sanders, his poise, everything, just being on the big stage like that for the first time in FBS football, outstanding. I've got great things to say about him that way. How sustainable is it? How sustainable is it for Travis Hunter to get 120 snaps out there? That was a track meet that those two teams played. When I conversely think about what Nebraska and Wisconsin or Nebraska and Minnesota just played in a 13-10 ball game, and I compare that to what those two teams played, it really makes me think that this is a game of differing styles, and whoever gets the style down is the one that's going to win it. If we try to sit there and get into a track meet and go high tempo and all that with Colorado, I think we can have some trouble. If we go out there and get an 8-minute drive right away, because again, the new clock rules only help us. I mean, in that regard, that clock, if we get 3.5 yards of play and we just churn out a couple first downs in a row, and this gets back to old school Husker football, the 3-yard runs in the first quarter by the fourth quarter are 5, 6, 7-yard runs. Can we do that against Colorado? I'd be shocked, to be 100% honest, if we don't.
Yeah.
We ran for over 200 yards, sack adjusted, against Minnesota. They gave up over 200 yards rushing against TCU, and TCU didn't even really try, to run it. And they certainly don't have a Jeff Sims at quarterback. TCU didn't. We can run the football on these guys. We're big. I mean, when I looked at Nash was taking over the inside of that offense line for Minnesota. And I was trying to compare what that would look like against Colorado. I don't know how much we're going to blitz. I'm not sure yet. We tried a few blitzes. They didn't always come home. I wonder if we're going to This is the interesting thing for me with Tony White is, do we sit back and kind of do the 8-man zone, only bring 3, get those big, tall D linemen? There's a lot of shallow crosses that Shedeur was completing. Can we get a Gunnarsson? Can we get a Nash to knock some passes down? If you knock 1 or 2 of those shallow crosses down, that none of them got knocked down last week against TCU.
Yeah.
Not a single one of them. We start doing that. If you take away some of the safety net things that Shedeur could just, fall into last week, take away some of those, it'll be interesting to see what he does next. The one thing we never saw him really do against TCU, and this part actually scares me, is that I know he has mobility. I know the guy can run, he didn't really have to. And so there's going to be some play where we are in an 8-man coverage. We got everyone covered. None of their 4 wide receivers or 4 guys that caught 100 yards last week get open. And then he takes off and he runs for 10 yards and get a first down. That's going to happen at some point. And that's a little bit defeating for a defense when that can happen. But it'll be interesting to see, how do we do it? Do we spy him? Do we, I don't know what, I can't imagine all the things that Tony White's going to come up with for this. But I just think that this is a game of being physical against these guys. Hit them on every single opportunity you have a chance to hit them. When Travis Hunter's lined up as a cornerback, block him.
Yeah,
block him over and over again. Run a pitch to his side and have the fullback lead on him. I mean, every time, send Fedoni on him. Knock Hunter around. It's not going to be 104 degrees on the field in Boulder like it was a week ago, but there can be other things that can get this guy worn out to where he's not going to want to play 120 plays.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think there is going to be an element of, I'm sure there's an element of surprise that came in for TCU of, you have no idea what to expect. You have no idea what players are going to play. You don't know who's going to start. You have no film. You're looking at Jackson State offense theoretically, but he's also got a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator. So, hopefully, Rule's up late right now studying some film. Rule, if you're listening, I hope you're not. Hope you're studying film. But, it's like now you got some tape on him. You see all these plays. You see all what they're trying to do. And he's, he even said in the press conference, I think yesterday or today, whenever that was, that they're going to try, they're going to throw 5 to 10 deep balls. So it's like, all right, we're preparing for deep balls. Hopefully we pick up the cues on when that's going to happen. Hopefully we pick up, the tendencies and when a deep ball's coming. So I think, like you would think with the advantage of not being caught by surprise, that plays in our favor. I think they're going to score. I think they're going to have a ton of yards. I think that's just like it's a fast-paced offense. But I do their defense stinks. So I think that's where I come back and I think we can win this game. We exactly like you're saying, if you control control the ball, control the game, you're going to frustrate the heck out of them because it's going to be a lot slower. That's what that first half of the Minnesota game was unbelievably frustrating because they had the ball for 15 of the 30 minutes or whatever it was, 15 of the 20 minutes. And if you do that to them, you've got these guys are going to be losing their minds. They're going to start forcing things. They're going to try to score too quickly. It's almost like what everybody did to Frost the last 5 years of you control the clock, he loses his mind, he tries to throw super quick. That, maybe that plays out in our favor. But I do think, having the confidence to know that we can move the ball and they're, not that strong defensively. They've got Hunter back there, but man, I don't know. I think that's what's giving me my juices back on a Tuesday and Wednesday. I think the other thing is giving me juice, man, is I cannot believe how wildly this has swung. That we were 8-point favorites, I think, before our game, and now Colorado's 3-point favorites. It's swung 11 points over the course of 72 hours, and the whole country. I just am I've never seen a hype train. We pride ourselves on creating hype trains, but this is they got 3 guys up for the Heisman after one game. They're saying Deion Sanders is the greatest story in the history of college football, that he's the most exciting coach in the history of college football. After 4 quarters, they've sort of just been anointed the kings of college football. And admittedly, it's fun to watch, but you're also it was one game. I don't know. It's you got to figure guys like Saban are sitting there what is happening in Boulder? What do you mean?
It makes for great television. And it makes for good ratings. And so, Rick Neuheisel said the center of college football is in Boulder next week. And I'm sure there's some people in Tuscaloosa with the Longhorns coming to town that would probably question that, right? That a 1-11 and 4-18 from last year would be the center of college football. But hey, I guess, the fact that we get to be a part of it is great. I to be honest, a bunch of that stuff is just hogwash to me. At the end of the day, this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get the first win of the Rule era. And I don't know how different I feel about Colorado than I did before. I'm genuinely impressed. Like I said from the beginning, I'm genuinely impressed with what they did, that they didn't look like they were just tripping over their dicks, for being the first game of the season. that's hard for a lot of teams. And we saw teams that have had coaches be there for, I mentioned, Clemson, but even even at times Duke looked like they were doing it and they ended up winning the game. First games of the year, a lot of crazy things happen. And so, yeah, to try to come off of that game and come to some grand conclusion that this team is instantly great or this team is instantly terrible. We just have too many examples over the years of where, you wait till the second week and you wait till the third week and you start to see something a little different. I'll be impressed with Colorado if they can do the same thing to Nebraska that they just did to TCU, because I think from a physicality standpoint, we bring something completely different. When you can show that you can do it against multiple different styles of teams and everything, that's one thing. I think Nebraska can give a blueprint. If we play the physical style game that I expect us to play, we're bigger than these guys. I mean, we just flat out anything about the coming off the bus, hey, this team wins coming off the bus. Nebraska wins coming off the bus against Colorado. But you got to play like that. I mean, we've got to bully these guys around. And if we can do that to Colorado and they still go out there and put up 38 points and beat us, whatever, I mean, my hat's off to them at that point. But, you do want to make teams one-dimensional. And I know Colorado was one-dimensional last week. The problem was their one dimension at 510 passing yards because it was like they were going against air. Yeah. We've got to be better than that. We just have to be better than that. Our defense looks so much better, so much improved. I mean, I would be shocked if we go out there and put on a performance that looked like what TCU did.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. That's what sort of got me excited on this is, God, what an opportunity. I mean, I think it's just like for the number of times and the number of years that we've just been beaten down, we continually find ourselves in these games like this. That's just what an unbelievable opportunity to completely right the ship. Every single time it has not worked out that way. Like, I tweeted something earlier that was like, this is the most hyped game since when? And it was like just breaking my heart because like there's like 100 comments and we lost almost every game. It's like the USC game, the Oregon game, the Michigan game. Remember when game day came to count for USC? We lost. I was like, oh my God, we lost all these. But it's like every time we continually have these opportunities placed on our table, unbelievable opportunity on the grandest stage in front of a national audience to totally prove to the world that we are making a stance. You just hope they can put it all together. But like, what an opportunity that we've presented. You put a game together, you beat Colorado after all of this hype. Oh my God. I mean, the rule era begins. Right? Yeah. I think that's like the bifurcation that stresses me out is like the rule era begins. If you win this game, it changes everything. It really does. It does. And then, but I think if you lose, you've already got spiraling right now. I mean, the spiraling after that is just going to be like, like what role do the HuskGuys play in trying to like put this fan base back together? It's just like, can't do it, Uncle. I'm calling Uncle.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, you just kind of, we've talked about that on the Redcast. You just maybe walk away from Twitter for a couple of weeks and hopefully get a couple wins and kind of regroup. All offseason, I talked about the race to 6 and how quickly can we get to 6 wins. That's the most important thing to me is getting to that bowl game. And I said all along, it can take 6 weeks, it can take 12 weeks. Well, now we know at minimum it's going to take 7 at minimum, right? This week is big. Every game is big. And you and I as fans, we can talk about the season. We can talk 2-3 games down the road. The team can't. But I would say you win this game. And from a mentality standpoint, now you come back home after playing 2 road games, and now you're coming home to play a group of 5 teams. And that mentality has to be, to kill and kill. Get to that 3-1. And then you talked about these big games that we played in, these big atmospheres and everything. Even last week to play on Fox on 7:00 on Thursday night. And now here we're going to play big noon and we're going to be playing prime and it's going to be the epicenter of college football, according to Rick Neuheisel. Get to 3-1. And when Michigan comes here, I know how good Michigan can be. I'm not sure, but Michigan is going to be an untested 4-0 team by that time. They won't have played in a big game environment yet at that point. And they'd be coming into Lincoln, Nebraska, where we would have a lot of momentum going at 3-1. So back to the point of this weekend, how big is this weekend? It's huge. It gets things rolling. It gets things started. We were very close last week in a game where, as you mentioned, you didn't think going into it that we might be that close. Or a lot of people, including Vegas, thought that it was going to be a 7.5 at least point game. So it's funny. I don't bet. I don't get into all that stuff. The BetCast guys, Dave and all those guys really want me to do it all the time. And I just don't. I don't buy into it. I don't buy into spreads and all that stuff because it's so reactionary. And then the second that one team does something, now the next week, all of a sudden the spread changes 14 points the other way. And if Nebraska beats TCU badly or Colorado badly, then Colorado will suck again next week. I mean, you can't ride the highs and lows like that if you're a player. You just got to keep doing. I was as impressed as anything with Rules what he did after the game, which was he didn't throw anybody under the bus. There wasn't any crazy talk. He didn't come out and say we weren't prepared to go up against a 3-man front or anything stupid like that. It was literally, it sounded like a coach that was, okay, I mean, we did this well. We need to work on this. We need to figure this thing out, and we're going to regroup, and we're going to do it again next week. And keeping that consistency going, I hope they hit in practice today. I hope they hit in practice tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesdays. And then Thursday, they get fast, I think. What was his saying? Thursday, and then Friday we practice fast, something like that. But just consistency. This is going to be a week after week thing, and keep getting better. They rotated a ton of players in that game. We got a lot of guys played. Special teams looked great. Defense looked great. We looked physical. I mean, those are good baselines. If that's the baseline of this season, I think we're going to win some games. I do. And I know that's probably an unpopular thing to say right now. I mean, somebody bookmark this, and I'm sure we'll come back to it in 2 months, but I think we're going to win some games based off of what I saw in week 1. But we have to finish a game. It's as simple as that. And I know that that's been an off-season priority. We got to finish.
Yeah. Look, I agree with all those things. And I think, again, like I hand up, I'm guilty too. I think that the first loss always hurts me the deepest. I think I build myself up all off season to think we're going to win all of our games. And then that first loss always just feels like a stabbing in my soul. But the thing that is pulling me off the mat is everything that we're saying. Like, okay, so Colorado's next up. Gosh, I do strongly think that we're going to win this game. But I do think that what gets me going too about the rest of the schedule and the way this team is playing, it kills me that we blew a fourth quarter lead, because I think if we had won the game, I think we'd be in the driver's seat in the West. Like, I really think that. I just think watching the rest of the conference, that you're talking about Illinois, and Northwestern and Purdue, these are just not good football teams. And you watch them all on Saturday, they're not good. So I think for me, it's less about like the loss, and it's more the missed opportunity to control our destiny in the West. I still think we can, but I think that's the missed opportunity component. But you hope they can, they learn from it, they internalize it. Because that's what as I look at the schedule, and this is what I walked through on the first podcast that got me to 10-2 is, if you beat Colorado, you're definitely ripping off wins against Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech. Not definitely, but theoretically you do. Michigan is the tough one everyone's focused on. But after that, you play an Illinois team that just needed a miracle, an absolute miracle to beat Toledo. Like, they should have lost that game. They had a fourth down, 4th and 15 that he threw an absolute Hail Mary to win that game. Toledo, right? You got a Northwestern team that probably won't score a touchdown the entire season. That was the worst football team that I've ever seen in, Power 5 football on Saturday. Purdue just lost to Fresno State, and they're an absolute disaster. They have a defensive coach that has put in one of the worst defenses at Purdue. Michigan State, not that good. Maryland struggled. And then you've got Wisconsin and Iowa. It's like the rest of the schedule, it's not a gauntlet, right? And that's what's like, again, I think what causes me some angst and gets me anxious but excited is this is our chance. And I'm being probably a little overzealous on this, but next year you got USC comes to town, and so does Oregon, so does Washington, all these great teams. Right now, I'm like, God, all we got to do is beat Purdue. All we got to do is beat Purdue and Illinois. Good God, come on, guys.
I think so much of it is that we haven't gotten off to a fast start in forever. When Riley lost to BYU on that Hail Mary, that was the first season opening loss Nebraska had since Florida State, in 1986 or 7. We had the nation leading, streak of opening game wins. It was almost 30 years worth. And then all of a sudden, since then, it just seems like about every single year we've lost. Now the last 4 years, including this year now, we've started at Ohio State, at Illinois, Northwestern in Ireland, and then at Minnesota. Next year we get UTEP at home to start a season. So it is helpful. Sometimes just winning that first game, being at home. It's amazing how good people feel right now about team XYZ who's ranked, who just beat a group of 5 team. I saw some stat. It was the SEC that was real impressive. The SEC scored, 7 touchdowns plus on half of their opponents, but they were FCS opponents. And then when South Carolina plays North Carolina, they lose. When LSU plays Florida State, they lose. When Florida goes out to Utah, they lose. People forget about that. So, who you play right away and matchups and everything matter a lot. I think Minnesota, I'm not a PJ Fleck fan. I think Minnesota's going to be okay. I think they're going to be a pretty decent team this season. They're going to win. They're going to win more games than they lose, and there could be some ugly ones. Although I think their quarterback is going to get better as the season goes on. I don't think that's a bad team, and I agree we should have beat them.
Yeah, I went deep on this, and again, I did this on our first podcast on Larry's End. It's fresh in my memory. I think I agree. I think they're going to be. I think their defense is going to be significantly better than Colorado's, and we're going to be able to like move the ball effortlessly in Colorado compared to their defense. And I think they will be a better than not team. But I do think so. They play Michigan and they play Ohio State in their crossovers, and they also play North Carolina. I think they're going to lose all three of those. I don't see it with that team, right? And then Wisconsin, Iowa, maybe they play those guys tough. But that again, so this is more me backing into why like Minnesota's going to walk their way out of the Big Ten West. And if we just beaten it, we'd be like right in the driver's seat. But I think if they lose Michigan, Ohio State, it doesn't matter, right? Because they have the two Big Ten losses at the end of the day. So I would agree. I think they're going to turn out better than we thought. But I also it kills me when you're like 55 minutes into the game and you're like, we're dominating this team.
When you talk about like being in the stadium, the worst feeling was that fumble. And before the fumble with Grant, I was talking, really cool Minnesota fan was sitting next to me, and this tall kid that's in college. So he's about a foot taller than me, but he was a Minnesota fan. And we're chatting, and it was right before the play that Grant goes and fumbles. He was asking me some of my thoughts on it. And I go, well, look down there. We got 23 out there right now. We need to get 22 on the field. That's exactly what I was talking. Like, that's the guy right now. At that point, he'd already had his 55 yards. He's averaging over 7 yards a carry. The guy needs to be running the ball. I'm not sure why we're not getting him out there. They give it to Grant. Grant makes one extra move, really nice move, but then that was enough to get the guy to fumble. It's just frustrating there. And then it's the slow death. And Dave and I are sitting next to each other, and we're just sitting there the last couple of minutes going, oh, it's just happening. I mean, and they're just going to slowly move down, and they're going to get this last second field goal. It's painful.
Yeah,
I don't ever want to
know it. Yeah,
I don't, and I don't ever want to. I'm not going to tell a Husker fan to stop being angry, or even I'm not even going to tell them to be patient. I mean, really, Husker fans have been patient. All I would ask for Husker fans is to try to separate the last 6 years of frustration from what Coach Rule is trying to do right now. We started our podcast, as you well know, in April of 2017, 3 months after playing in the Music City Bowl. And so we were fresh off of a disappointing 9-4 season, quite honestly, in my opinion. But hey, it's 9-4. We'll go 9-4 next year. We'll keep this thing going, whatever. And 6 years later, I mean, if you'd have told me that we're going to be sitting here, we've never been to a bowl game, we haven't had a winning season, all those things, I don't know if we would have done this to begin with. It is painful, but there are things I saw last week in that game, the way that we ran and tackled and gang tackled and played competent special teams and caught punts and, just little kind of hidden yards that Kemp would do by catching the punt and getting 6 yards instead of having it roll for another 20. Things like that. We haven't seen that in 5-6 years. It was a different type of game. We also played a really physical team that wants to get physical, and we went, punch for punch with them to the very end. There's value in that, but that value now especially has to be seen against a team that doesn't want to do that. There's no way in hell Colorado wants to go punch for punch. There's no way that they want to get under center and try to pound it against us and vice versa. They want to keep this game a track meet. And that's why I keep saying this is a game of styles, differing styles, and who can win it. And Nebraska needs to control what it can control. We have got to control that clock. We have got to just take every opportunity to hit those guys and pound on them and use our strength. They're going to try to spread us out on defense. We're going to have to make a couple stops here or there. But offensively, we have got to just pound them and take so much time off the clock. And then to your point, when you frustrated their offense so much because they haven't touched the ball in the last 10 minutes, then you hope they start to panic. They start to make a bad throw here or there.
Yeah, you just try to force it. I mean, we watched it for 5 years of Frost gets super antsy and is like, all right, I'm going for the end zone. Like Adrian's going to throw a bomb. Like we're going to do something crazy. And it just never worked out the entire time. But that's what happens when you have these Oregon style, Colorado style, like pass happy teams. So yeah, I think, we play the Big Ten brand of football right back at them. And I hate it. Like, I think the Big Ten is brutal. I just was like watching that first half. It's like, man, new clock rules plus like these teams controlling the clock is like an absolute nightmare. We had 2 drives in the first half. It's like, this isn't football. I thought the second half was a lot more entertaining, which is kind of what gets me excited for Colorado's. Is like, that was a fun game to watch. And if it does turn into a shootout, at least it's exciting, right? At least it's like, it's better than watching Iowa bleed out.
I love watching quarterback centric kind of I love watching option football. I love quarterbacks making reads and having a quarterback like Jeff Sims who can really hurt you outside the pocket. I also don't want to see Jeff Sims taking countless runs right at the middle that are easily running back plays. So, I mean, there's a separation there. But I liked a lot of what I saw in the first half in terms of how we moved the ball. We've got to keep getting back to the I back part or the running back part of this with Irvin, and there's play action roles and things that we can do with Sims that move the pocket, get him outside of that. That stresses the defense every time. Jeff Sims.
Do you think we should get Fedone? What about Fedone?
Well, I mean, I think there was some media guy had already kind of written Fedone off, and I was like, good Lord, the guy hadn't played a game in 3 years, had 2 season-ending knee injuries, and he just played a full game.
I thought he was like the total X factor that we potentially could use.
Yeah, and he still can. He still can be. I mean and same thing with Kemp. I mean, Kemp didn't have a single catch, but I think they said he was targeted or was the first target on 9 of the plays. He just didn't get to him. That's again force the issue as the play caller. Create plays where you're rolling out and there's only 1 or 2 options, and it's very clear. Get that ball to Kemp if that's what you want to do. It's very clear. Get that ball to Fedone if that's what you want to do. Make it very apparent with how you call it. When you see the guy in the pocket and he's sitting there and his head swiveling from left to right and he's having to make all these reads, I don't know. That just scares the heck out of me right now. And it doesn't stress the defense.
Yeah,
stress the defense by getting him out of there using his legs. We have a dangerous quarterback. And I know that there's going to be a lot of eyes rolled after he just threw 3 interceptions. But that quarterback, when used properly, that dude can do things to defenses that Casey Thompson certainly could.
I think first half, some of those reads, I think like his 26-yard gain he had out of the back of the end zone, I thought it was fantastic. Mm-hmm. I think he can scoot. I think he runs the play action extremely well. Like when they let him do it, I think he has the tools and everybody can see it. I think, and he had 90 yards rushing. Like he has the tools to be successful. It's hard because I think there were a lot of times where he felt like Satterfield still thought he was coaching Rattler from South Carolina, right? Of like, he's a drop back passer. He's just sitting in the pocket. And you're like, this guy's not meant to do this. So you hope that they can, adjust for that, which I think they will. So I'm going to bring it to we're going to wrap this thing up. You got a score prediction for Saturday.
I don't do the score predictions. What I just kind of break down is for Nebraska to win this. This is what I always say. For Nebraska to win it, this is what that has to happen. Nebraska needs to have probably, I'll say 35 minutes minimum time of possession, 35 to 40 minutes. Let's target that. Keep their offense off the field. Limit the amount of possessions that they're going to have. Maximize the possessions that we have here. We've got to basically walk away with points, I think, on probably 80 to 90% of our drives, walking away with either three points or 7. I'll throw a number out there. I think that 28 points should win this game. So if Nebraska can get to 28 points, if we can get to the upper 20s, that 28 to 31 range, I think that should be enough to win it out there with the type of defense that we have. If it takes more than that, if we have to score 35 and 42 and 45 points to beat Colorado, then I don't know. I probably wouldn't be a very good spot for us to be in. So anyways, but the thing is, I think that the style of play that we've talked about doing, being physical there, getting under center, pounding on these guys, taking up 8-minute drives and everything, we can get to that 28. There's definitely a path for Nebraska to win this. And I just in general, I guess it's the optimistic side of me. I just think that I think we're going to win it. I think we're going to win it because I think that we're going to play that style of football. And I don't think that it has to come down to the final 5 minutes. Then I think we can have a more than a 1-score lead. And that's the thing. When you come down to the last 5 minutes and the other team is still within reach, that seems to be where all the nerves are. If we could be up 9 points, 9 points with 5 minutes left, I think that that's how we finally get over this little hump of having some rough endings. Is just have a little bit of comfort at the end.
Yeah, I think we win. I said it preseason. I changed slightly only in a sense that I'm like, oh, they're significantly better than I thought they were going to be. I think it sets up extremely well for us. And I was on a group, our Husker group text thread with Zach Lubeck and Chuck Hall and Alex Post, the guys from high school, and we were all watching the Colorado game together, and we're like, towards the end of the game, we're like, okay, this is crazy. I can't believe how good they are. But also, the best thing that could happen to us is them winning this game.
Yeah.
And that was, I think Chuck had said that. It was like the best thing that could happen is that they win this game because, and I think this is played out perfectly, is like if they had lost, it would have been like, oh, great effort. They can kind of play, but like they probably would have had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder coming into the game. Now they're top 25. And now they've got 3 guys up for the Heisman. And Deion's already been crowned, coach of the year and the greatest story of the year. And these guys are feeling themselves. Right? They are feeling themselves. They're talking about Heismans. They're talking about, NIL deals. They're talking about all this stuff. Our players are getting nothing. Right? They're getting like booed around campus right now. And like, you'd think that would fuel the fire a little bit for them. Come in there like, wow, nobody thinks we can win. The line has swung from +8 to -3. The whole country is bet. Like it's the single most bet on game in all of football right now.
Yep.
Is everybody putting money on Colorado? The whole country thinks we're going to lose. It's a great spot to be in because that's no pressure, right? I think 6 days ago, there's a ton of pressure on Nebraska to beat Colorado. I don't think there's any now. I think everybody's expecting us to lose so the Deion, parade can go on. And that's a great spot to be in as a competitor, as a player, as an athlete at Nebraska. It's like, wow, you get to go into Colorado's house in front of a sea of red. There's going to be a ton of fans there, including yourself, and pull off the upset, right? That's a great spot to be in. And I think them winning and beating TCU and, these guys are feeling themselves. They feel great about themselves. I think it sets up really well for us in that regard. And I think that's what's kind of pulled me all the way out of like, I can't believe we just lost another 1-score game back to like, we got the opportunity of a lifetime right now. This is it. Like we win this game. It changes the entire trajectory of the Rule tenure. It changes the entire trajectory of the season. And instead of talking about Deion, they're talking about Rule. I mean, what a spot that would be Saturday night, man. We're going to drink some beers.
Yeah, I'm sure. There's a lot of people that bookmarked a lot of tweets here over the last week, and they're just ready for Nebraska, win or lose, right? We win that game. There's a lot of people that have said a lot of things already in the last 3 or 4 days. I think that they'd want to take those things back. We're 0-1 in a game where we were 7.5-point underdogs and we lost by 3. It was frustrating how it finished, but the style of play that we played, I think, is going to translate very well to Nebraska, not just Big Ten. It's too many times it's this is Big Ten football we're playing. No, I think to be successful, Nebraska needs to play what Nebraska football is. And Nebraska football is that physical style, that swarming defense, good special teams, getting under center, being a run-based team. That will win in the Big Ten, but that's what Nebraska will do best ultimately anywhere it goes. And it travels very well. Play that style of defense against Colorado. And I mean, look, I think Colorado, again, I give them a lot of credit for what they did last week, but I know that we can defend that. I know we can. I know we can tackle these guys. I know we can knock down passes. I know we can run on these dudes. So at the end of the day, I mean, to me, it's going to go down. Let's watch a fun game. Let's watch a really fun game that
you're going.
Yeah, I'll be down there. Dave will be down there. Dave's trying to get his first away victory win since Colorado 1995. That will be his first away one. And, we said this going into the 2019 game when we took over their stadium and then lost after going up 17-0. The kind of the downfall of Nebraska football, not to put a downer on this, but the downfall of Nebraska football started in 0-1 at Colorado. I was at that one, the 62-36 game, whatever the score was.
That was a nightmare.
Yep. Well, this is the one. This is how we get the mojo back. This is how we finally break the curse, is going back to Boulder and, crushing their spirits right after Deion, became the coach of the year. So
we're ending it right there. That's the way we finish this thing off. 2 guys that think we're going to win. We've come all the way back from the doldrums of another 1-score loss to believe both of us are predicting Huskers win over Colorado. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This is the HuskGuys podcast. Honke, thanks, man, for coming on. Always appreciate you. Appreciate all of your generosity over the years coming on the show and invite me on yours. And go Big Red.
GBR.